Hi everyone, I'm Scott Schneider. This is Stereo Niche. Hey, this week we're going to talk about a couple of old friends. Stick around. All right, so let's talk about the Sansui 9090. Now, I've been waiting for some time to do this piece, partially because it was one when I wanted to take some time and get familiar with doing my videos and being more comfortable with how I did them. So I had put it off, but I decided to do it now because this unit is extremely special to me. It's just an old buddy of mine that I've had almost since the very beginning of when I started collecting vintage audio. So, I wanted to dedicate this episode to Mishka, which is our family dog who passed away a couple of weeks ago. And there's a bit of a dedication for him at the end if you wanted to stick around for that. But this 9090 came to me not long after I got into vintage audio. And I found it on Craigslist and it was shown up there and I answered right away. The seller happened to not live far from where I lived. And so he actually brought it to me. And it had been in his possession since new, but it had also been in continual use. He never stopped using it. So I acquired it for the princely sum of $100. And he brought it delivered, believe it or not. Wouldn't find that today, of course, but he kept it in fantastic shape, and I didn't do anything to it since then. It's not been recapped. I've just done some lamps on it. Some LED lamps have been replaced, and that's actually all I've ever done to it. And it's played wonderfully. So I think there is something to be said about units who have never come out of service, if you will, and the caps sort of dried out. This one has performed, solidly ever since, and I've not had any issue with it whatsoever. So the 9090 is just a well-regarded receiver. It has fantastic specs. It's a 110 watt is what they rate it at, but when folks get it on the bench, it typically rates much higher. I think I've seen around 130 watts on average. So it very much overperforms what the rating is. Feature rich. What I like about the 9090 are a few things different from the 9090 DB, which is a bit more common. For one, it's the one thing you can look at a DB, know it's a DB right away, is that the difference is the power button. This has a matching button like the rest of the push buttons here, round push-in button. The DB model has a black square button. So it doesn't match anything else. So it's to me, a little bit unusual. There's also a section over here for the Dolby section on the DB model as well. That can be hard to see sometimes in pictures and things, but you always know if it's a DB model with that square button here. Obviously the DB is Dolby on the DB model, and that board can become problematic for issues. And so it's not on this one. This was an add-on. There was an adapter you could add on to it with RCA connections in the back, and then you could turn it on. But it's unnecessary. There's no need for it anymore. So I personally prefer the 9090 over the DB, even though the DB has a little more power. I think this one is more than sufficient. And it's just been with me since the beginning, so I have a sort of a sweet spot for it. And if someone were to say, what's your top 5 favorite pieces of gear in my whole collection, this would be in there somewhere. It may not be first, but it's going to be in that top 5, mainly just because I've had it, and it's, again, just been with me so long, and it's been, stellar and problem-free for that whole duration. So that's kind of, what you think about when you have your family dog. And so I felt like it was kind of appropriate to bring it out and showcase it to you guys. There's some other features about these. There are a couple of you can buy lamps for these off of eBay very easily. Some other things I think are available now. Some of the boards that might be problematic, I think you can find. But on the lamps, The one thing about these that I found, and I'm not a tech, but I don't mind getting in there and replacing lamps and things like that. I can, do some soldering and if needed, and do some of that. You don't need to do soldering for all the lamps. Some of these are the little fuse lamps you can put in. But there are a couple of videos. There's several videos out there from some excellent techs that show you how to replace the lamps. I will tell you that these lamps for the power meters here are sitting behind and below the tuner board. So I'm going to put two links into the description of the video, and you can combine them and I think find a very easy way to replace them yourself. So one of them is from Xraytonyb, I think it is, and he shows a way of replacing these with regular LEDs, and you add a resistor, I think it's 220 ohm, in series with them, and you can replace them, and it's a perfect fit into the little slot, into the 5mm slot that are on each side of the meter. And so that's a great way of replacing the lamps and what to replace them with. What I like about the other video is that he shows you a better way to get to the meters here, so you can actually get in there and work on them, because he's an expert and he does it all the time. For those of us that are not, you really need to have much better access. So the other link I'm going to show you, he demonstrates how to remove the tuner section, which is very easy to do. It's very modular. So you release some screws, do some unclipping. You have to unsolder one wire, and then you can lift the whole tuner board out away from you, away from the top side, which exposes all of the internals, so you can get to these meters. But in addition to that, you can get into all of the controls and deaux them, because on the other side, on the bottom side, it's covered by another circuit board and you can't get to them. But by removing the tuner section, you can get to everything and do a proper cleaning while you're in there anyway. So look for those, and just note that you need to watch both of them and then use the technique of adding the LEDs from the one video, but the way to get to them and access them, watch the other video. But they're both excellent, and they do a very good job at explaining the details and what they're doing. So combine those two together and you'll knock that out, along with the other LEDs as well. They go through that. These are some fused, behind this dial are some the fused LEDs, little fuse lights that you can pop in, as well as here. And then there are LEDs that are for the indicators of what it's on as well. The other thing, while you're in there, the video where he shows you how to remove the tuner section, he also shows you how to change the pins so you can keep the lights on in any mode. And it's a great little thing. I prefer that. Most of us do, to see the lights. Originally, it only lights up if it's in FM or AM. But if you wanted to go to phono or auxiliary, then most of the lights go out. But there's one pin that you switch over on a connector inside. Switching it over and then reconnecting it gives it power on all the time, and you get to look at your entire beautiful lit up receiver anytime you've got it on. So check that out, and if you're going to be in there doing the lamp replacements, very quick to switch that wire over and have it lit up all the time. All right, so I wanted to talk a little more about the time frame and what else was available during the time when the 9090 was out. So the 9090 ran from 1976 through 1979, from what I could determine. I do see some others, I think, show that a little bit differently. I think I've seen some think it's 76 to 77. But from what I can tell, based on when I saw the advertisement start and what the Orion guide states, it's 76 to 79. So pretty close, might vary by a little bit. What I have noticed is I think Sansui was in the habit of releasing things similarly to cars, where they may actually release them in the latter part of the prior year, but call it the next year. So they may have released them to the market in 76, but didn't actually officially call it released until maybe 77 or so. But either way, they were hitting the States around 76 and ran through at least 79 from what I could tell. So the 9090, and we call these the XOXO series because each model has the sort of double numbers. The 9090 being the top of the line, which is rated or the spec'd out at 110 watts. There was an 8080 model that was 80 watts. Then there was a 77 model, 7070 model that was 60 watts, a 6060 at 40 watts, and then a 5050 at 30 watts. So interestingly, as the numbers went down, the spec power ratings went down even more. So only the 9090 had higher power than the 90 rating. So not sure why it worked out that way, but I thought it was very interesting to see that. So this was their receiver line. This came after the 771, 881 line, and the DB line was still being manufactured. I think the DB line started before this, around 75, and then ran through 79 as well. But the 9090 or XOXO series, while it was their receivers from that time frame, this also coincided with the professional series, the AU and TU line. So that's the AU 9900, TU 9900, the AU 11,000, 20,000. Those models were also in the market and in the Sansui lineup at that time. So some of the the best offerings from Sansui were during this time frame that we recognize and know about. So late 70s, a lot going on, and just a great time frame for Sansui. So at this point, I'm going to show you guys some up close shots like always, and then we'll come back after that and then take a look at the specs and the ratings. Well, let's walk through and see what the specs turn out to be and kind of get an idea of where this is going to rank. So again, this is the 9090 from Sansui, manufactured from 1976 until 1979. It's rated at 110 watts, although is very well known to go beyond that. Had an MSRP of $750. So starting out with power, it has a rating, as I said, of 110 watts. It gets 20 points for that. It does have a 4 ohm rating. So like many of the receivers of that time frame, rated for 4 ohms for one set of speakers. But if you're going to run multiple sets simultaneously, they need to be at least 8 ohms or above. So, but it does have the very important 4 ohm spec because most of us are going to run one set. So that's very important. Gets 30 points for that. On the phono side, only has one phono. You know, not a big deal really. I think most of us tend to only run one phono. The DB model, I believe, has 2 phonos on it. So, you know, if you need the extra phono connection, you can certainly go and find the DB. But one phono gets 10 points. On to additional inputs, has 3 additional inputs, 1 auxiliary and 2 tape inputs. So it gets 30 points for that. Has full complement of controls here, balance, volume, dB mute, and loudness. So it gets 5, 10, and 5 points each for those categories. Now on the tone, lots of tone controls. Again, full featured, yet you have a lot of control here. So it has the defeat, bass, mid, treble, high-low filters. So it's got the gamut, it's got everything. And we keep on going. One of the few receivers to have power meters, which I talked about earlier with changing out the bulbs, but you know, not many receivers had power meters, so it gets 20 points for that. Has pre-out, amp-in ability to disconnect them on the back and run them separately if you need to, or hook up something in between. A wood cabinet, you know, nice wood cabinet. It's one of the features I liked about them. Like this, it's implemented into it rather than one of the sort of Marances, you know, where you had to slide it into the separate cabinet. So this incorporated a little, to me, more nicely, more thought out, I guess. On to AC switches, has one of each, one switched, one unswitched, kind of unusual. Most tend to have more than that, but 10 and 5 points each. And then lastly, speaker connections. You get 3 sets. So 3 sets of speakers, again, not all 4 ohm, of course, but you can hook up 3 sets, 10 points apiece, 30 watts total. So totaling everything up, we get 250 points, which is pretty far up there. For receivers, that matches, I think, the Yamaha CR-1020, and there might only be one other receiver that surpasses that points. The only thing that goes higher than that typically are separates. Separates tend to have more functionality because, you know, they're separates. But as far as receivers go, this is right at the top with the points and the way I add up the features here. Not a surprise. I was sort of expecting this is about where it would land. So, you know, it just shows that it has lots of features. It was top of the line after all. So I don't think you can go wrong with any in this series. The XOXO series is just stellar. Well, I think that's pretty much it. It's been a long video. Been an emotional one for me, to be honest with you. As I said in the beginning, it's an old friend. And, you know, I certainly hope you guys appreciate it. If you find one of these, you know, give it the TLC that it needs, and it'll be around for a very long time. Well, all right, I think that'll do it for this go-round. I appreciate you guys tuning in as always. If you don't want to miss the next video, hit subscribe, hit notification as well. Give us a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see what a Swedish Valhund looks like, stick around and you'll see that next. Thanks again.